The rain lashing against the thin glass of their tiny apartment was the only sound, besides the drip from the leaking tap. She was 6 months pregnant, cold, and clutching a cup of tea with both hands. His name was Marcus, her husband, and he had just taken off his wedding ring, placed it on the table next to an eviction notice, and said, "I can't do this anymore, Elara. I'm leaving you." He told her she was a millstone, a nobody from nowhere, and that this baby was a mistake he refused to make. He walked out, leaving her with $300 and a shattered life. What Marcus Thorne didn't know, the poor woman he just discarded, was Elara Vance, the hidden heir to the $90 billion Vance Sterling Group, and she was about to come back for everything he had. The 6th-floor walk-up on Carmine Street was drafty. It was the kind of cold that seemed to come from inside the walls, a damp, permanent chill that no amount of steam from the clanking radiator could fix. Elara Vance, known here only as Elara Hayes, pulled her threadbare cardigan tighter. She was 26, but the exhaustion of the last 2 years, combined with the difficult pregnancy, made her feel 40. She was staring at the single can of tomato soup she'd been saving, trying to muster the energy to open it, when the door swung open. Marcus Thorne didn't bother to knock. He was her husband, after all, though he hadn't spent a night in the apartment in over a week. He stood in the doorway, and the first thing Elara noticed was the suit. It wasn't one of his 2 rotating J.C. Penney suits. This was bespoke. Charcoal grey, silk blend, sharp. It was a suit that didn't belong in this apartment, and he wore it like armor. "Marcus," she said, her voice small. "You're home. We need to talk," he said. He didn't move to kiss her. He didn't even look at her belly, the obvious, swelling proof of their child. His eyes scanned the room, the peeling linoleum, the second-hand sofa, the pile of medical bills on the counter, and his lip curled in a way she had never seen before. It was disgust. "What's wrong?" she asked, a cold dread washing over her. "This," he said, gesturing to the entire room. "All of this. It's wrong, Elara. I've been thinking, ever since the partners' dinner. I am destined for more than this." "More than us? Look at you," he scoffed, finally looking at her. "You're not even trying. I'm out there every single day, grinding, networking, trying to build an empire, and I come home to this. A cramped apartment, a wife who can't even keep a part-time job because she's sick all the time. And now, that," he pointed at her stomach. Elara flinched, as if he'd struck her. "This is your child, Marcus. It's a millstone, Elara. It's an anchor. I'm 29 years old. My life is just starting." He stepped forward, his new expensive shoes clicking on the floor. "I've been offered a position, a real one, junior vice president at Von Hess Capital." That's wonderful," she tried, forcing a smile. "See, we can move, No, I can move. You and I. We're finished." The words hung in the air, heavier and more toxic than the smell of damp plaster. "What?" He sighed, an exaggerated, impatient sound. "I met someone, Elara. Someone who understands my world. Someone who fits. Her name is Isabella Von Hess." Von Hess, the name clicked. "Your boss's daughter," Elara whispered, the blood draining from her face. "She sees my potential," Marcus said, his voice turning cold and defensive. "She doesn't see me as a meal ticket to escape poverty. She sees a partner." I never saw you as a meal ticket," Elara stammered, tears finally welling. "We were building a life. We said in sickness and in health. Marcus, I'm pregnant. That's your problem, not mine." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. This was not the man she'd met in a coffee shop, the man who'd charmed her with his talk of real values, and how money corrupted everything. This was a stranger. "So that's it," she said, her voice shaking. 2 years just gone. "It was a mistake. I was settling," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wedding ring, a simple gold band she had bought him from her meager savings, and dropped it on the worn kitchen table. It spun, then settled with a dull, metallic sound. Next to it, he dropped his key. Then from his wallet, he pulled out 3 $100 bills. "What's this?" she asked, numb. "Be practical, Ilara. This is for you. To, take care of the problem. Or for a bus ticket back to wherever it is you came from. I don't care. But you need to be out by the 1st. The lease is in my name, and I'm terminating it." He was telling her to get an abortion. He was discarding her, his pregnant wife, for $300. She looked at the money, then up at his face. The man she thought she loved was gone. In his place was a monster of ambition, clothed in a new suit. "Don't try to contact me," he said, straightening his tie. "My lawyers will handle the divorce. It should be simple. You have nothing, so there's nothing to divide." He turned and walked to the door. He didn't look back. Not once. He just pulled the door shut, and the final click of the lock echoed in the tiny, cold room. Ilara stood silent for a full minute. The tears that had threatened to fall simply stopped. The overwhelming, crushing sadness was replaced by something else, a cold, hard, clarifying rage. The $300 on the table was the ultimate insult. She walked to the table, her legs steady. She looked at the ring. She looked at the money. Then she walked to her worn-out backpack, the one she'd had for 2 years. She reached into a false bottom, a compartment Marcus never knew existed. She pulled out a sleek, black, encrypted satellite phone. She pressed the number 1 for speed dial. It rang twice. A crisp British voice answered. "We've been waiting for your call, Miss Vance." "Arthur," Ilara said, her voice no longer the small, timid whisper of Ilara Hayes. It was the commanding, ice-cold alto of Ilara Vance, CEO of the Vance Sterling Group. "The experiment," she said, "is over." "Where is he, Ms. Vance?" "He just left. He thinks he's on his way up. He's just left." "Shall I retrieve you?" Arthur Grayson's voice was filled with a mix of concern and "I told you so" that he was too professional to voice. "Yes. Send the car to the usual extraction point." "And Arthur?" "Ma'am?" "Liquidate $500 million from the Singapore fund. I want it moved to the New York acquisition account by morning. We're going hunting." She clicked the phone shut. She looked at the $300 on the table. She picked it up, walked to the sputtering radiator, and, in a symbolic gesture of the war to come, held the bills against the hot pipe until they began to brown and curl, the smell of burning money filling the tiny, poor apartment. To understand the fire, you had to understand the woman who lit it. Ilara Vance was not just rich. Wealth was the water she'd swum in since birth, and the Vance Sterling Group was her ocean. It was a silent empire, a global conglomerate with controlling interests in everything from German technology patents and Scandinavian shipping lines to rare earth mineral mines in Australia. Its founder, Alistair Vance, Ilara's grandfather, had been a notorious recluse who believed wealth was a weapon, not a toy. When Alistair died, he left the entire $90 billion enterprise to his 24-year-old granddaughter, Ilara. She was brilliant, educated at private Swiss schools, and holding degrees from both MIT and LSE. But she was utterly alone. Her parents had died in a yachting accident when she was young, and Alistair had raised her in the gilded cage of their New England estate. The moment his death was announced, the sharks began to circle. Men, sons of bankers, European aristocrats, tech billionaires, suddenly saw her. They didn't see her. They saw a merger, a prize, a signature on a dotted line. After a particularly loathsome dinner with a hedge fund manager who had practically calculated her net worth on a napkin, she'd snapped. She'd summoned Arthur Grayson, her grandfather's head of security, and her only true confidant. "I'm disappearing," she'd announced. "Miss Vance, that's—" "Don't Miss Vance me, Arthur. I'm suffocating. I want to know if a single person on this planet can love me for me. Not for the Vance name, not for the stock portfolio. Just me." "This is ill-advised," Arthur had argued, his face a mask of concern. "It's dangerous." 2 years, she'd said. "I'll take a new name. Elara Hayes. I'll work a normal job. I'll live in a normal apartment. You will be my only point of contact. The board can run the day-to-day. They're competent enough. But I need to do this. I need to know what's real." And so, the experiment began. Arthur had set her up in a modest, but safe, apartment in a city far from her New York base. But Elara, committed to the ruse, had found her own, cheaper, less safe apartment, the one on Carmine Street. She'd gotten a job as a barista, and for a year, she was just Elara Hayes, a quiet woman with no family and no past, struggling to make rent. It was there, in that coffee shop, that she met Marcus Thorne. He was a junior analyst at a second-tier firm, all ambition and cheap suits. He was charming. He'd forgotten his wallet, and she'd covered his $4 coffee. He'd come back the next day to repay her, and they'd talked for an hour. He didn't ask about her family or her money. He talked about his dreams. He railed against the trust fund kids he worked with. He told her, "I want to build something real, Elara, with someone real." He was the perfect antidote to the vipers she'd fled. He was, she thought, a good man. They fell in love. Or she did. Looking back, she realized he fell in love with the idea of her. She was a blank slate. Pretty, intelligent, but most importantly, adoring and undemanding. She was his, completely. She had no family to impress, no rich father to judge him. She was the perfect, supportive, starter wife. They married at City Hall 6 months later. Arthur had been apoplectic. "You're marrying this person without a prenuptial agreement?" "A prenup for what, Arthur?" Elara had laughed. "My $14 an hour coffee shop job. He doesn't know about the Vance fortune. This is the entire point. He's marrying me." But the experiment had a flaw. Elara had tested if a man could love her when she had nothing. She had never tested if that same man could withstand the temptation of everything. The moment she told him she was pregnant, the dynamic shifted. It was no longer 2 kids against the world. It was, in his eyes, a problem, a cost, a burden. His ambition, which she had mistaken for drive, soured into resentment. Now, sitting in the back of the armored Maybach as it sped away from Carmine Street, the Elara Hayes persona dissolved. The Maybach was silent, a tomb of black leather and soundproof glass, a stark contrast to the clanking radiator she'd left behind. "Where to, Miss Vance?" Arthur asked from the passenger seat, not looking back. "The penthouse at the Sterling Tower, and get Dr. Chen to meet me there. I want a full checkup for the baby. No more back-alley clinics." "And Mr. Thorne?" Elara looked out the window, the rain-slicked streets of her poor life blurring past. "Marcus Thorne just accepted a job at Von Hess Capital," she said, her voice flat. "I remember the name. Didn't grandfather almost acquire them back in 2018? "He did," Arthur confirmed. "But Robert Von Hess was too arrogant. He refused the offer. Alistair said, 'Pride like that will bankrupt him in a decade.' It's been 7 years. The intel suggests the firm is over-leveraged." A slow, cold smile touched Ilara's lips. Good. Call the legal team. Call the M&A division. I want a full, deep-dive analysis of Von Hess Capital's entire portfolio, their debts and their liabilities. I want to know every skeleton in Robert Von Hess's closet by the time my doctor's appointment is over. And then? Arthur asked. Ilara placed a protective hand on her stomach. The baby kicked, as if sensing the shift in its mother. And then, she said, we buy it. And we fire him. For Marcus Thorne, the 3 months after he walked out on Ilara were a golden blur. He had stepped out of the damp, grey world of Carmine Street and into the sun. Isabella von Hess was everything Ilara was not. She was sharp, demanding, and connected. Her blonde hair was always perfect, her laughter was like a sharp bell, and she wore her entitlement like a second skin. She wasn't just in the world Marcus wanted, she was that world. Her father, Robert von Hess, a man with a booming voice and shark-like eyes, had welcomed Marcus with a wary enthusiasm. "So you're the boy who's finally tamed Isabella," Robert had said, clapping Marcus on the back at a dinner at the exclusive Oak Room Club. "She tells me you're a killer, a real rainmaker." "I do my best, sir," Marcus had said, his voice smooth. "Good, because Von Hess Capital doesn't hire best efforts. We hire closers." Marcus was made a junior vice president, a title that came with a corner office, a staggering paycheck, and, most importantly, respect. He moved into Isabella's sprawling duplex overlooking the park. He traded his old car for a new Tesla. He and Isabella were instantly the new it couple in their small, elite financial circle. The divorce papers had been sent to the Carmine Street apartment and had come back, unsurprisingly, return to sender. Marcus assumed Ilara had, as he'd suggested, taken the $300 and crawled back to whatever hole she came from. He felt a brief, fleeting pang of not guilt, but inconvenience. A child was messy. It would have complicated things with Isabella. He told himself he'd done the right, hard thing. He'd cut off the gangrenous limb to save his own life. One evening, Marcus and Isabella were hosting a pre-gala fundraiser in their apartment. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and canapes. Robert von Hess pulled Marcus aside, a glass of 30-year-old Scotch in his hand. "Marcus," Robert said, his voice low and serious, "you're doing good work. The board is pleased. But I have a new target for you, a big one." "I'm ready, sir," Marcus said, his heart beating faster. This was it. You've heard of the Vance Sterling Group. Marcus vaguely recognized the name. Reclusive, old money. Mostly commodities and European real estate, aren't they? "They're a sleeping giant," Robert said, "and the giant is waking up. Their old CEO, Alistair Vance, died a couple of years back. No one knew who took over. They went silent. Now, suddenly, they're back, and they're liquid. Very liquid. They've created a new M&A division in New York, and word on the street is they're looking to acquire a mid-level investment bank to use as their North American flagship." Marcus's eyes widened. "They want to buy a firm like yours?" "They want to buy a firm exactly like mine," Robert said. "Or rather, partner with one. They're hosting an exclusive investment gala in a few weeks. It's the talk of the town. They've invited the top 5 firms, including us, to present a pitch. Not just a pitch, a vision. The firm that impresses them gets access to the Vance Sterling war chest. We're talking a $500 million line of credit, minimum." Robert gripped Marcus's shoulder. "This is the deal that takes Von Hess Capital global. This is the one that makes us untouchable. And you," he said, poking Marcus in the chest, "are going to lead the pitch. You're my rainmaker. You're going to land this whale. Isabella slinked over, looping her arm through Marcus's. "What are you two boys plotting?" "We're plotting our future, darling," Robert beamed. "Marcus is about to make us all very, very rich." Marcus felt a surge of pure, uncut adrenaline. This was it. The top of the mountain. He was going to stand in front of the faceless, nameless CEO of the Vance Sterling Group and prove that he, Marcus Thorne, was a master of the universe. He'd done it. He'd shed his old, poor life. He'd cut away the mistake he'd made with Elara. That night, he worked in his new home office, the city lights spread out before him like a carpet of diamonds. He started drafting the presentation, his mind buzzing with figures and projections. He completely missed the small encrypted device that one of Isabella's new housekeepers, a woman who was ex-Mossad and on Elara's payroll, had installed under his desk. The device was recording everything. His voice, his keystrokes, his login credentials. As Marcus plotted his ascent, Elara Vance was patiently documenting his every move, patiently building the trap, and patiently waiting for the perfect moment to spring it. The whale, he failed to realize, was the one who had invited him to the hunt. The Vance estate in upstate New York was not a house, it was a territory. 1,000 acres of deep forest, high stone walls, and a central granite mansion that looked more like a Gothic university than a home. This was Elara's gilded cage, and for the last 3 months it had been her war room. She was 7 months pregnant now, and the transformation was profound. The tired, gaunt Elara Hayes was gone. In her place was a woman of chilling stillness and power. She wore no makeup, and her hair was often pulled back in a simple, severe bun. She'd traded cardigans for custom-tailored cashmere lounging robes. She swam 50 laps every morning in the Olympic-sized indoor pool and spent her afternoons in the estate's command center, a high-tech office her grandfather had used to manage his global assets. Arthur Grayson, who was now her acting COO, stood beside her. On a massive, wall-mounted screen, a live feed of Marcus's desktop was displayed. They watched him drag and drop a slide titled Synergistic Growth Projections into his pitch deck. "He's using the modified Q3 data," Arthur noted, his voice flat. "The data we leaked to him through that junior analyst we placed?" Elara asked, not taking her eyes off the screen. "The same. It's subtly inflated, just enough to look brilliant, but false enough to be considered securities fraud if he presents it as fact." "And he will," Elara said. "He's too arrogant to double-check the source. He thinks he's a genius." Her pregnancy had become her focus. The baby, her baby, was the only innocent in this. This was no longer just about a broken heart. It was about what Marcus had tried to do. He hadn't just discarded a wife, he had discarded a child, his child. He had tried to erase him with $300. This, to Elara, was an unforgivable sin. The revenge she was planning was not for Elara Hayes. It was for the future Alistair Vance II, the boy who would one day inherit the empire his father had been too blind and too stupid to see. "Dr. Chen is here for your appointment, Miss Vance," an assistant's voice came over the intercom. "Send him in, thank you." Dr. Chen, the top perinatologist in the country, entered the office with his portable ultrasound machine. He was used to the unusual setup. Elara continued her work as he prepped her. "How are we today, Elara?" he asked kindly. "We are strong, Doctor," Elara said, finally smiling as she looked away from the screens. He applied the cold gel to her stomach. Instantly, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of a tiny, powerful heartbeat filled the high-tech war room. It was a stark, beautiful contrast to the silent data streaming in from Marcus's office. "He's perfect," Dr. Chen said, pointing to the screen. "Heart rate is 145. Growth is right on schedule. He looks active." Ilara watched the flickering grey image of her son. This was real. This was the only thing that was real. He's a Vance, Doctor, she said softly. He's a fighter. After the checkup, Arthur returned. The invitations for the Vance Sterling Acquisition Gala have all been accepted. Von Hess, Goldman, Morgan Stanley. All the sharks are circling. Good. And the venue? The Metropolitan Grand Ballroom. We have booked the entire floor. Security is our own. No outside press, no cell phones allowed inside. It will be a hermetically sealed event. Excellent. I've reviewed the file on Robert von Hess. The man is leveraged to his eyeballs. He's been using company funds to cover personal losses on a bad real estate deal in Dubai. He needs this $500 million line of credit from us. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. He's desperate. Which makes Marcus Thorne his designated savior, Arthur concluded. He's putting the entire fate of his company on Mr. Thorne's shoulders. Ilara stood, walking to the massive window that overlooked the forest. The trees were bare, the skeletons of winter preparing for spring. Marcus always wanted to be a rainmaker, she said, a hand on her belly. He's about to walk into the biggest presentation of his life. He thinks he's pitching to a faceless board of old men. He thinks he's finally made it. She turned, and the light from the monitors caught the cold fire in her eyes. Send my measurements to the couturier. I want a dress for the gala. Custom. Maternity, obviously. I want it in Vance Sterling blue. And Arthur, make sure I have a clear, unobstructed view of Marcus Thorne's face when I walk onto that stage. The Metropolitan Grand Ballroom was a cathedral of wealth. The ceiling, 60 feet high, was frescoed with classical allegories. 3 massive crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, bathed the room in a warm, golden light. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The air smelled of hothouse flowers and old money. Marcus Thorne felt like he'd been plugged into an electrical socket. He was vibrating with nervous energy. He smoothed the lapels of his new Tom Ford tuxedo. You look perfect, darling, Isabella murmured, adjusting his bow tie. She was stunning in a severe black gown, a diamond choker at her throat. Just remember what Daddy said. They're old school. No flash, just substance. Confidence and substance. I've got this, Marcus said, though his palms were sweating. Robert von Hess clapped him on the shoulder, his face flushed. There he is, my golden boy. Tonight's the night, Marcus. You knock this out of the park, and I'm not just making you a full partner. I'm announcing your engagement to my daughter at the corporate retreat in Aspen. Marcus's heart hammered. This was everything. Partner. Husband to Isabella. The world, finally, at his feet. All he had to do was win over a reclusive CEO he'd never even seen. The first 2 presentations, from Morgan Stanley and a private Swiss firm, were competent, but dry. Then, the MC, a man with a voice like polished velvet, announced. And now, presenting for Von Hess Capital, Mr. Marcus Thorne. Marcus walked to the stage. He plugged in his laptop. His opening slide, a bold Von Hess Capital, the future of global finance, lit up the massive screen behind him. He was brilliant. He knew it. He was charming. He was passionate. He was fluent. He spoke of growth, of synergy, of a new vision for North American markets, all powered by the rock-solid foundation of Von Hess Capital and the legendary global reach of the Vance Sterling Group. He used the inflated data, the numbers he thought were his secret weapon, and they painted a picture of irresistible, explosive profit. In conclusion, he finished, his voice ringing with triumph, a partnership with Von Hess Capital is not just an investment. It is a statement. It is the future, Thank you." The room, filled with the financial elite, broke into strong, sustained applause. Robert von Hess was beaming, giving him a standing ovation. Marcus felt a wave of euphoria wash over him. He'd done it. He'd nailed it. The MC returned to the podium. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for that compelling presentation." Marcus, still on stage, gave a modest bow. "And now," the MC continued, as the applause died down, "it is my profound honor to introduce the woman who has led her family's legacy into a bold new era. The person you have all been presenting to this evening. Please welcome the chairwoman and CEO of the Vance Sterling Group, Ms. Ilara Vance." A name. A woman. Marcus felt a flicker of surprise. He stood to the side of the stage, ready to shake her hand. The conquering hero. The main ballroom doors opened. The string quartet stopped. A man Marcus recognized as the MC's assistant, but who was, in fact, Arthur Grayson, walked in. He was followed by two other men, built like mountains in tailored suits. They fanned out, securing the stage. And then she walked in. The first thing that hit Marcus was the color. The dress was Vance Sterling blue, a deep, radiant cobalt that commanded the eye. It was custom-tailored, flowing over her body, and it did not hide, but rather accentuated the one thing that made no sense. She was 7 months pregnant. The second thing that hit him, a split second later, was her face. It was Ilara. Marcus's entire nervous system seemed to shut down. The blood rushed from his head, leaving a roaring, static sound in his ears. The room tilted. He could smell the phantom scent of cheap tomato soup and damp plaster. His hands went numb. This was impossible. This was a hallucination, a stress-induced nightmare. This was his poor, nowhere wife, Ilara Hayes, in a gown that cost more than his car, being introduced as the billionaire CEO he was just pitching. Ilara glided through the room. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at anyone, her eyes fixed on the stage. She moved with a grace and power he had never seen, an aura of absolute, terrifying authority radiating from her. She reached the stage and took the microphone from the MC. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice a calm, cool alto that carried to every corner of the silent room. Marcus was frozen, a statue just 10 feet away from her on the stage. She finally turned. Her eyes, no longer the warm, adoring gaze he remembered, but the cold, appraising eyes of a predator, met his. She gave him a small, polite, devastating smile. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice amplified by the speakers, "a truly ambitious presentation." Isabella, in the front row, was looking back and forth between Marcus and Ilara, her face a mask of confusion. Robert von Hess was still clapping, though more slowly now, a dawning horror on his face as he watched Marcus's reaction. Ilara turned from Marcus and addressed Robert directly. "Mr. von Hess, Ilara Vance, a pleasure to finally meet you in person." Robert, scrambling, stood up. "Miss Vance, the pleasure is all mine. What a surprise. May I reintroduce my top VP, Marcus Thorne? Oh, I'm afraid that won't be necessary," Ilara said, her gaze sweeping the room. "I'm already intimately familiar with Mr. Thorne's work." She then looked directly at Marcus. The smile was gone. "In fact," she said to the room, "Mr. Thorne's presentation has been the most illuminating of the evening." He brought to my attention several discrepancies in the von Hess quarterly reports. The numbers he presented, she gestured to his synergistic growth slide, which was still on the screen, are fascinating, because they don't match the real numbers, the ones filed with the SEC. Marcus's blood turned to ice. "Ilara, what Mr. Thorne, are you aware that presenting false and non-public data to induce a $500 million investment is a felony? Elara asked, her tone conversational, as if asking about the weather. It's wire fraud, securities fraud, and given that you're sleeping with your boss's daughter while your pregnant wife was served divorce papers, I'd say it's also just fantastically poor judgment. A collective, horrified gasp rippled through the ballroom. Isabella von Hess shot to her feet, her face pale. What did she just say? Marcus, what did she say? Robert von Hess looked like he'd been shot. Wife? Pregnant wife? Ilara's gaze was locked on Marcus. You left your wife, Marcus. You left her in a 6th-floor walk-up with an eviction notice and $300 for this. She gestured to the ballroom. You told her she was a millstone. You told her to take care of your child. She placed a hand on her own stomach. Well, Marcus, here I am. And here he is. She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping, though the microphone caught every devastating syllable. You wanted to impress the CEO of the Vance Sterling Group. You wanted to land the whale. Congratulations, Marcus. She leaned in, close enough to whisper. You have my full attention. Marcus couldn't breathe. He couldn't speak. He could only stare at the woman he'd thrown away, realizing, with dawning, annihilating horror, that he hadn't just discarded his wife. He had declared war on an empire. The immediate aftermath was chaos. As Elara was escorted off the stage by Arthur and her team, the ballroom erupted. Marcus, left alone on the stage, his fraudulent slide still glowing behind him, was set upon by a shrieking Isabella. You're married! You were married to her? Her voice was a razor. Elara Vance? You told me she was a waitress. You told me she was nothing. You idiot. You absolute, pig-headed idiot. Isabella, I can explain. I didn't know, Marcus stammered, grabbing her arm. She ripped it away. Don't touch me. You didn't just lie to me. You brought her down on my father. You're finished, Marcus. We're finished. She stormed out, her diamonds flashing. Then came Robert von Hess. His face was no longer flushed. It was a waxy, terrifying grey. My office! Now! He hissed and stalked off, his security team clearing a path. Marcus stumbled off the stage, the whispers and stares of the financial elite following him like knives. Did you hear? His wife? Securities fraud. He's dead. Utterly dead. The ride to the Von Hess Capitol building was silent. When they got to Robert's penthouse office, the lights were on. A team of grim-faced lawyers was already there. Robert, I swear I had no idea who she was, Marcus began, his voice cracking. She lied to me for 2 years. She pretended to be poor. Robert slammed his hand on his desk, the sound like a gunshot. Shut up. Do you think I care about your pathetic little love life, you moron? Do you know what she just did? She exposed the numbers. She executed us, Robert roared. While you were on that stage, running your mouth, this came through. He threw a tablet across the desk. It was a press release, timed to go live the second Elara finished speaking. Vance Sterling Group initiates hostile takeover bid for Von Hess Capital, citing massive financial irregularities and gross managerial misconduct. Hostile takeover, Marcus whispered. She didn't want to partner with us, you fool, one of the lawyers spat. She wanted to buy us. She used this gala to get you on a stage, on record, committing securities fraud. The data, Marcus said, his mind racing. The Q3 data. It came from Johnson in junior analysis. Johnson hasn't worked here in 2 days, the lawyer snapped. He was a plant, you imbecile. A plant from Vance Sterling. He's probably on a plane to a non-extradition country as we speak. He fed you that data, and you were too arrogant and too desperate to verify it." Marcus collapsed into a chair. He was set up. From the very beginning. Every success, every piece of brilliant data he'd found in the last 3 months. It was all her. Ilara. She had been guiding him, like a lamb to the slaughter, to this exact moment. What happens now?" Marcus asked, the fight gone from his voice. Robert von Hess poured himself a drink, his hand shaking violently. "What happens now is twofold. 1. The Vance Sterling Group is offering to buy the company for 30 cents on the dollar, a fraction of its worth. It's an insult. But it's also a private offer. If I accept by morning, she may agree to keep the SEC investigation internal. And if you don't? If I don't, she hands her file, your presentation, the audio from this room, the planted data, God knows what else she has, to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She burns the company to the ground, and I go to prison for the fraud you committed." "So you'll sell," Marcus said, numb. Robert drank the scotch in one gulp. "I'll sell. I'll be ruined, but I won't be in a cell." Which brings us to the second part of what happens now. You. Me. She doesn't just want the company, Marcus. She wants you. You're the blood sacrifice. The terms of the sale are specific. The Vance Sterling Group will absorb all assets, but not all liabilities. And you, my boy, are the single biggest liability we have. What are you saying? I'm saying, Robert said, his voice now dangerously calm, that Von Hess Capital is terminating your employment, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and fiduciary malfeasance. We are also filing a civil suit against you for damages to claw back your salary and bonuses, and we will be cooperating fully with any and all federal investigations to which we will be pointing them directly at you. Robert, you can't, Marcus pleaded, jumping to his feet. I did this for you, for Isabella. You did this for you, Robert corrected, his eyes dead. You were sloppy, you were arrogant, and you picked a fight with a dragon. You used my company, my daughter, to get ahead, and you brought this woman, this Vance, to my doorstep. He pressed a button on his desk. Security. The doors opened. 2 guards entered. Mr. Thorne is trespassing, Robert said, turning to look out the window. Remove him from my building, and take his access card. He is not to be permitted entry again. Robert, please, don't do this, Marcus begged. It's already done, Robert said, his back to him. Ilara Vance gets the company. The SEC gets you. And I get to survive. It's the cost of doing business, Marcus. You should have known that. You should have known who your wife was. Marcus was dragged out, shouting and pleading, through the opulent lobby he had, just hours before, considered his kingdom. He was thrown onto the street, his briefcase and coat tossed onto the pavement after him. It was starting to rain. Just like it had been 3 months ago. He was in a Tom Ford tuxedo that cost $10,000, and he had nowhere to go. His phone buzzed, a text from Isabella. It was one word, pig. His bank app buzzed, a notification from Von Hess Capital. His corporate accounts were frozen. His direct deposit was reversed. He was, once again, penniless. But this time he wasn't just poor. He was ruined. For a week, Marcus Thorne lived in a state of suspended terror. He'd sold his new Tesla for cash, which he was burning through at a cheap motel by the airport. His name was radioactive. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and every financial gossip blog. The Thorne Supremacy, how one junior VP's fraud and affairs took down a dynasty. He was a pariah. He'd tried calling Isabella, but her number was disconnected. He'd gone to their duplex. But the doorman, who used to greet him by name, had blocked him, stating he was on a no-entry list. He was running out of money. He was running out of time. The SEC had formally named him in their investigation. He was going to prison. There was only one person who could stop this: Ilara. He became a stalker. He knew she had taken over the Von Hess building, which was already being rebranded. The Von Hess letters were being power-washed off the facade. He waited, day after day, in the coffee shop across the street, nursing a single coffee for hours. Finally, he saw her. She was exiting the building, surrounded by her security team. She was 8 months pregnant now, a queen in a bespoke camel hair coat. She looked thriving. "Elora!" he screamed, dropping his coffee and running into the street. The security team, led by Arthur Grayson, instantly formed a wall around her. "Ilara, please!" he begged, his voice hoarse. He was a mess. He hadn't shaved in days, and he was wearing the same clothes he'd had on for 48 hours. He was the man from Carmine Street again, only worse. Ilara stopped. She looked at him, her face impassive. She nodded once to Arthur. Arthur stepped toward Marcus. "Ms. Vance will give you 5 minutes. You will be searched. You will not raise your voice. You will not make any sudden movements. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, anything," Marcus panted. He was patted down, his phone taken, and then escorted into the massive marble lobby. Ilara was waiting by the elevator bank. They rode up in silence, the security team in the car with them. They didn't go to Robert's old office. They went higher, to the new executive floor, which was still under construction. Wires hung from the ceiling. The floors were bare concrete. The only thing in the vast open space was a single modern desk and chair overlooking the entire city through floor-to-ceiling windows. This was her new throne room. She dismissed her security. "Wait outside." They were alone. "You're redecorating," Marcus said stupidly, looking around. "I'm cleansing," Ilara replied, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "This building, like the company, had a rotten foundation. I'm tearing it down to the studs." "Ilara, listen to me," he said, taking a step forward. I'm so sorry. I love you." Ilara actually laughed. It was not a sound of humor. It was a cold, sharp, empty sound. "You love me?" "Marcus, please, don't insult my intelligence. You don't even have the—" "I do," he insisted, tears of desperation welling in his eyes. He was playing his last card. "I loved Ilara Hayes. I did. I was weak. I was stupid. The money, the pressure, it confused me. But it was always you. If you hadn't lied to me, we'd still be together." He tried to frame himself as the victim. She just stared at him, unimpressed. "I lied about my money, Marcus. You lied about your character. We are not the same." But what we had, it was real, wasn't it?" Before Isabella?" "I thought so," Ilara said, turning to look out the window. "I thought you were a good man, trapped by circumstance. It was the entire premise of my experiment. I wanted to find someone who wasn't blinded by wealth. And I found you." She turned back to him. "And the irony, the exquisite irony, is that I found the one man on earth more blinded by the idea of wealth than anyone I had ever met. You didn't love me, Marcus. You loved that I was a blank slate for you to project onto. A simple, adoring, poor wife who would anchor you. And the second you had the chance to trade up, you did. You threw me away. You threw us away. For a title. For an apartment. For her. "I'll do anything to fix it," he cried, dropping to his knees. It was a pathetic, groveling display. "Please, Ilara, call them off. The SEC, the lawyers. I'll be your assistant. I'll be your driver. Anything. Just don't let me go to prison. Think of the baby, our baby. He shouldn't have a father in jail." This was the line, the one he should never have crossed. Ilara's face, which had been cold, now became something else entirely. It became furious. "You," she said, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "will never, ever call him your son. He is my son. He stopped being your son the moment you put $300 on a kitchen table and told me to take care of the problem. He stopped being your son when you called him a millstone. He stopped being your son when you walked out that door and never looked back, leaving his mother to be evicted." She walked to her desk, her presence filling the room. "You ask me to think of my baby. I am. I am thinking of him every second of every day. And what I'm thinking is that he deserves a legacy free from the taint of the man who tried to erase him. What I am doing, Marcus, is not revenge. It's cleansing. Just like this building. I am scrubbing your name, your failure, and your weakness from my life, and from his." You can't," he stammered, scrambling to his feet. I'll sue for paternity. I have rights." Ilara smiled. "Do you? You're about to be indicted on multiple counts of securities and wire fraud. You'll be in a federal prison for a minimum of 10 to 15 years. By the time you get out, your rights will be meaningless, and my son will be a teenager, and he will know exactly who you are. He will know you're the man who chose a corner office over him. You're a monster," he spat, his desperation turning to an ugly, cornered animal rage. "You set me up. You did this to me." "No, Marcus," Ilara said, pressing the intercom on her desk. "You did this to yourself. I just provided the stage and the lighting." "Arthur," she said into the intercom, "Mr. Thorne is finished." The doors opened. Arthur and the security team entered. As they grabbed Marcus by the arms, he had one last, desperate thought. "The divorce!" he shouted. "We're still married. The divorce wasn't finalized. That means I'm entitled to half of everything. You're my wife." Ilara looked at Arthur, who simply held up a tablet. On the screen was a document. "The divorce, Mr. Thorne, was finalized a month ago," Arthur said, his voice laced with contempt. "You were served papers at Ms. von Hess's duplex. The signature confirmation is right here." I never signed anything. Ms. Isabella von Hess signed for you," Arthur said. "She was your cohabitant. It was a legal serving. You failed to appear in court. The judge granted Ms. Vance a default divorce on the grounds of abandonment and infidelity. You were too busy playing master of the universe to check your mail." Marcus's face went white. He was tied to nothing. He had nothing. "It's pathetic, really," Ilara said as they dragged him to the elevator. "My grandfather always said, 'Never betray the family.' You didn't just betray your wife, Marcus. You betrayed the Vances. And you did it for a 20% raise and a new suit. You're not a monster. You're not even a villain." She looked him up and down, the man she once loved, now a broken, sobbing wreck. "You're just a bad investment." The elevator doors dinged open. Marcus was dragged in, shouting her name. The doors slid shut, leaving Ilara alone in her vast, empty office. The city spread out before her. Finally, cleansed. 1 year later. The man on the 6 a.m. bus looked older than his 30 years. His suit was a cheap polyester blend, and it hung loosely on his frame. He clutched a briefcase containing his lunch, a sandwich and an apple. He got off at his stop and walked to a drab, grey office park in a New Jersey suburb. His name was Marcus Thorne. After cooperating fully, showing remorse, and giving up Robert von Hess, who still received a 3-year sentence, Marcus's own sentence had been reduced to 18 months, plus 3 years of probation. He'd been released 2 months ago. He was blacklisted from finance, permanently. His name was a verb. Don't pull a thorn on this account. He now worked as a data entry clerk for a shipping logistics company. He sat in a cubicle, under fluorescent lights, typing numbers into a spreadsheet for $19 an hour. As he walked into his building's lobby, he passed a small newsstand. The cover of Forbes magazine caught his eye. It was a stunning photograph. A woman, exuding power and, surprisingly, warmth, was sitting on a lawn, laughing. In her lap was a beautiful 1-year-old boy with her eyes and a shock of dark hair. The headline read, "The Phoenix, How Elara Vance Took Down a Corrupt Empire, Gave Birth to an Heir, and Redefined the Vance Sterling Group for a New Generation." Marcus couldn't help it. He picked it up. He saw his $4.50 slide across the counter. The article detailed her ruthless cleansing of Von Hess Capital, which she had absorbed and rebranded as Vance Sterling North America. It detailed the immediate SEC compliance audit she'd imposed on her own company, firing 3 board members from her grandfather's era. But it also detailed her new, massive philanthropic arm, the Alistair Vance II Project, a $5 billion fund dedicated to providing housing, legal aid, and education for single mothers and at-risk children. The article quoted her. "I was fortunate. I had resources. But I saw for a brief time what it looks like when you don't. No woman should ever have to choose between her safety and her child. This fund is not charity. It's an investment in the most undervalued asset in the world, a mother's potential." There was a photo of her son's first birthday party, a small private affair at the Vance estate. Marcus's hands were shaking. He saw the face of the son he had never met, the son he had traded for a lie. He finished his shift at 5 p.m. He got on the bus. It was crowded. He had to stand. He got back to his small, 1-room apartment. He opened his fridge. It was empty, save for a beer and half a loaf of bread. He was now truly the poor man he had always feared being. He had no power, no connections, and no future. He was a ghost, trapped in a life he had built from his own worst choices. Miles away, in a sprawling park that her company had just donated to the city, Elara Vance was not dressed as a CEO. She was in jeans and a sweater. She was pushing her son, Alistair, on a swing. He squealed with laughter, his little arms reaching for the sky. "Higher, Mama, higher!" "Okay, my little eagle, higher we go!" She laughed, pushing him. Arthur Grayson, now Alistair's doting uncle, stood nearby, holding a diaper bag. "He has your spirit, Miss Vance," Arthur smiled. "He has his own spirit," Elara said, slowing the swing and lifting her son into her arms, kissing his chubby cheek. "He's not a Vance. He's not a thorn. He's just his. And he's perfect." She had won. But it wasn't the hostile takeover, or the prison sentence, or the Forbes cover. It was this simple, real, unshakable joy. She had tested the world and found it full of fakes. So, she had built her own world, with her own family. And in it, she was, finally, truly, free. And so, Marcus Thorne, the man who threw away a diamond because he thought it was a stone, was left with nothing but the dust. Elara Vance proved that the best revenge isn't just living well. It's building an empire on the ashes of the life that nearly destroyed you. She took her pain and turned it into power, not just for herself, but for thousands of other women like her. What did you think of Elara's payback? Was it justice, or was it a revenge served ice cold? Let us know in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in her shoes? If you loved this story of betrayal and ultimate triumph, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to see that you should never, ever underestimate a woman with a plan. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another one of our real-life drama stories. We'll see you in the next one. He was Marcus Thorne, a New York real estate billionaire. She was Olivia, his pregnant wife, decorating their new nursery. Their life looked perfect until she found the messages. The messages weren't just an affair, they were a plan. They discussed her pregnancy as an inconvenience and the prenup as a cage. They thought she was a fragile, hormonal wife who would cry and scream. They were wrong. While her billionaire husband parted with his mistress, Olivia Hayes did something else. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She called a lawyer, and in total silence, she began to dismantle his entire empire. The penthouse on Central Park South was less a home and more a statement. It was a 10,000-square-foot testament to the power of Marcus Thorne, a man who didn't just build skyscrapers but seemingly collected the sky itself. Olivia Hayes, his wife of 3 years, often felt like just another acquisition, the beautiful, well-educated, placid wife who completed the portfolio. Today, however, the apartment's marble chill was broken by a rare warmth. Olivia, 6 months pregnant, was supervising the assembly of a pale grey, hand-carved crib. It was an obscenely expensive piece, imported from France, and it was the only thing in the vast home she felt she had truly chosen. "A little to the left, please, Miguel," she said softly, her hand resting protectively on the swell of her stomach. The baby kicked, a small, reassuring flutter. This was her anchor. This child was real in a life that often felt like a performance. Marcus Thorne was a force of nature. He was handsome in a brutal, corporate way. Sharp suits, a voice that never rose but always commanded, and eyes that assessed value in a single glance. He had inherited a substantial family business, Thorne Global Properties, and, through a series of ruthless acquisitions, had multiplied its worth tenfold. He was, by all accounts, a genius, and he was, Olivia believed, her husband. Lately he was distant. "The Singapore deal, darling," he'd murmur, kissing her forehead before disappearing into his home office for hours. "It's a beast. Merger closing," he'd text, cancelling dinner yet again. Olivia, ever the understanding wife, would nod. She'd eat her chef-prepared meal alone, overlooking the glittering expanse of Manhattan, and tell herself this was the price of a life she'd never dreamed of. She'd met him at a charity gala, a quiet art historian dwarfed by his ambition. He'd pursued her with a singular, focused intensity that she'd mistaken for love. Now she understood it was acquisition. This evening, the nursery was finally complete. The scent of fresh paint and new linen filled the air. She was humming, organizing tiny cashmere onesies when Marcus finally came home. He didn't come to the nursery. She heard the clink of ice in a glass from the living room. She walked out, her smile bright. "Marcus, it's done. You have to come and see." He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, a tumbler of Macallan 25 in his hand. "In a minute, Liv. Just winding down." "It's beautiful," she pressed gently. "I think you'll—" "I'm sure it is," he cut in, his voice clipped. He turned and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've got impeccable taste. That's why I married you." He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe he'd bought last month. "I have to take a call. London is online." He brushed past her, his phone already to his ear, and shut the study door with a soft, definitive click. The distance wasn't just in his time, it was in his touch. He hadn't truly looked at her, or her pregnant belly in weeks. A small, cold knot of dread, one she'd been diligently ignoring, tightened in her stomach. She dismissed it as hormones. She was pregnant. She was emotional. He was just busy. It was the Singapore deal. She went back to the nursery and sat in the glider, rocking herself slowly, convincing herself of the lie. Later that night, she was woken by the low murmur of his voice. He was in the master bathroom, the door slightly ajar. He thought she was asleep. "I told you, it's handled," he was whispering, his voice not sharp, but soft, seductive. A voice she hadn't heard, directed at her in a long time. "No, she has no idea. She's too busy playing house. Yes, St. Bart's is booked, as soon as the merger ink is dry. I know, you too." Olivia's blood turned to ice. She didn't move. She didn't even breathe. He came back into the bedroom, the scent of expensive whiskey and a faint, unfamiliar perfume. A floral, something sharp like tuberose, clinging to him. He slipped into bed, his back to her, and within minutes he was breathing the deep, even breaths of a man with no conscience at all. Olivia lay awake until the first grey light of dawn broke over the city, the cold dread now a sickness in her throat. St. Bart's, a perfume she didn't own, a voice that wasn't hers. Her perfect life had just fractured, and she was terrified to look at the pieces. The next 2 days were a blur of performative normalcy. Olivia made breakfast. She attended her prenatal yoga class. She smiled, she nodded, and all the while the whispers from the bathroom replayed in her mind. St. Bart's. She has no idea. You too. Marcus was oblivious, lost in the hum of his own world. He was so confident in her passivity, so assured of her blindness, that he'd become careless. The carelessness was his first mistake. His second mistake was gifting her a new tablet. "For the baby," he'd said distractedly over breakfast on Wednesday, sliding a sleek, silver box across the marble island. "You can order all whatever it is you order. And it's linked to my master account, so don't worry about the cost." "Thank you, Marcus. That's very thoughtful." He'd grunted in response, already buried in the Wall Street Journal. She set up the tablet that afternoon. It was, as he said, linked to his master Apple account, his calendars, his contacts, and his iMessages. They flooded in, a digital torrent sinking from his phone. Most were boring. "Markets up. Confirm 4 p.m. Send the draft." And then a thread appeared. The name was Sienna. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew that name. Sienna Valenti. The new, brilliant, dangerously beautiful VP of Mergers and Acquisitions at Thorn Global. The woman Marcus had praised just last week as a real killer instinct. Olivia's fingers trembled as she opened the thread. It went back months. "Sienna, just landed in Singapore. Hotel is divine. Wish you were here instead of at that dreary board meeting." Marcus, "Almost done. We'll be there by midnight. Save me a drink." Sienna, "A drink? That's all?" Marcus, "Don't be greedy. Not yet. That was 3 weeks ago, when he was supposedly stuck in negotiations." Olivia scrolled, her nausea rising with every message. She saw it all. The shared hotel rooms filed under executive travel, the coded language, the plans. And then she saw the messages from the night she'd overheard him. "Sienna, is she getting suspicious? You seemed tense on the phone." Marcus, "She's pregnant, Sienna. She's always tense, or tired, or something. Honestly, it's a useful distraction. She's so focused on the nursery, she wouldn't notice if I painted the walls black." Sienna, "Poor you, trapped with the nesting mother." "When do I get you for St. Bart's?" Marcus, "Booked, the week of the 14th. The merger closes on the 13th. We'll celebrate. Sienna. And what about her and the... Marcus, stop worrying. The prenup is a fortress. She's provided for, but she can't touch the company. She's not a threat. She's just the mother of my heir. It's fine. She's not a threat. A useful distraction. The prenup is a fortress. The words echoed in the silent, empty penthouse. The pain was immediate and visceral, a white-hot blade through her chest. She stumbled to the bathroom, the one where he'd stood, and was violently sick. The man she'd married, the father of her unborn child, saw her as a nesting animal, a distraction, a line item on a balance sheet, secured by a prenuptial agreement. When the sickness passed, the grief remained, but it was quickly crystallizing into something else. It wasn't the fiery rage she would have expected. It was cold. It was absolute. It was a silence so profound it felt like the air pressure in the room had dropped. He didn't just cheat. He discussed her and their child with contempt. He'd used her pregnancy, the most vulnerable time in her life, as a cover. Olivia walked back to the tablet. Her hands were perfectly steady now. She began to scroll, but this time she wasn't a wife. She was an archivist. She screenshotted every single message. The St. Bart's plans, the hotel receipts he'd forwarded to Sienna, the disparaging comments about her. She forwarded them all to a new, encrypted email account she created on the spot, one with a name that meant nothing, project.anchor. Twerwa@gmail.com, she found his calendar. St. Bart's wasn't on it. Of course not, but on the 14th there was a 3-day block marked Thorn Global, Singapore Summit. She kept digging. She found a forwarded email chain. It was from his personal jeweler, a private house called Benoit and Fils in Paris. The subject, Ray Custom Piece. Attached was an invoice and a photo. It was a Cartier Love bracelet, the one paved with diamonds. It wasn't a new design, but the invoice was for a custom engraving on the inside. SV Forever. MT. The bracelet had been delivered to his private office 2 weeks ago. Olivia had never seen it. She saved the invoice. She saved the photo. She cross-referenced the delivery date. It was the same day he'd come home late, claiming a dinner with the board, and had given her a bouquet of supermarket carnations, a paltry, thoughtless offering. The betrayal was no longer just emotional. It was financial. It was logistical. It was a conspiracy. Olivia wiped the tablet clean, factory reset it, and then placed it back in its silver box. She walked into the nursery, the room that was supposed to be her sanctuary, and looked at the soft grey crib. He thought she was a nesting mother. He thought she was a useful distraction. He had no idea who he was married to. She picked up her phone. She didn't call her sister. She didn't call her mother. She scrolled to a contact she'd been given by a friend at the art gallery, a woman who had gone through a similar, high-profile divorce. The contact was saved under a simple, innocuous name, E. Reed. She typed a message. My name is Olivia Hayes. I am the wife of Marcus Thorne. I need to schedule an immediate and confidential consultation. I have evidence. I am 6 months pregnant, and I want a divorce. She hit send. Then she deleted the message from her phone. She deleted the new email from her history. She went to the kitchen and began to prepare dinner as if it were just another Wednesday. The silence had begun. The reply from E. Reed came the next morning. It was brief and clinical. My office, Friday, 3 p.m. Use the south entrance on 52nd Street. Do not give your name to the lobby. Ask for suite 4500. They will be expecting Ms. Bennett. Bring $20,000 in cash or cashier's check for the initial retainer, and bring your evidence. Olivia's stomach clenched. $20,000. She had her own bank account, a generous allowance Marcus provided, but a withdrawal that large would trigger an alert. She couldn't risk it. She went to her jewelry box. Tucked in the back was a pair of sapphire and diamond earrings, a bequest from her grandmother. They were her most prized possession, the only thing of real value that wasn't from Marcus. She looked at them, her heart aching. War requires sacrifice. She spent the morning at a high-end consignment jeweler on Madison Avenue, a place that specialized in discreet sales. By noon, the earrings were gone. In her purse, she had a cashier's check for $22,500. She felt hollow, but resolved. Friday arrived. Olivia told Marcus she had a long prenatal checkup and massage booked. He barely looked up from his laptop. Great, have fun. Evelyn Reed's office was not what Olivia expected. It wasn't a glass and steel tower. It was a pre-war building, discreet and elegant. Suite 4500 had no name on the door. Inside, the waiting room was hushed, panelled in dark wood, and empty. A moment later, a woman who looked more like a university provost than a divorce shark emerged. She was in her late 50s, with sharp grey hair cut into a severe bob, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit. This was Evelyn Reed. Her eyes, behind expensive, minimalist glasses, were the colour of a winter sky. Miss Bennett, this way. Her office was immaculate, overlooking a quiet courtyard. There was no clutter, just a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of law books. The check, Evelyn said, not as a request, but a command. Olivia handed it over. Evelyn glanced at it, then at Olivia's pregnant stomach. You said you're 6 months. Whose child? His. Marcus Thorne's. I'm 100% certain. Good, that's the only leverage you've got. What's the prenup? I have a copy. Olivia's hands trembled as she pulled the thick document from her bag. She'd retrieved it from the home safe that morning. Evelyn took it and scanned the first few pages, her speed terrifying. She hummed. Drafted by Julian Vance. He's good. Very good. Standard Billionaire's armor. You get the penthouse for 2 years post-divorce, a lump sum of $5 million and $50K a month in alimony, non-negotiable. In exchange, you waive all rights to all properties, assets and business holdings, present and future. It's an iron box, Miss Hayes. You signed away everything. But he's having an affair, Olivia whispered, her voice sounding pathetic even to her own ears. Evelyn Reed almost smiled. It was not a kind expression. And? New York is a no-fault state. Infidelity is for the New York Post, not the court. It's a morals clause, but the penalty here is, let me see. Yes. If he's at fault, he forfeits his right to the $5 million he would have gotten if you cheated. It's meaningless. This prenup is designed to let him cheat, Miss Hayes. It's a permission slip. The blood drained from Olivia's face. So, I have nothing. You have a child. Child support will be astronomical. We'll get you $100K a month, maybe more, just for the child. You'll be comfortable, Evelyn said dismissively, but you won't touch his empire. You won't get the justice you're looking for. You'll be the comfortable, discarded first wife. Olivia sat back, the room spinning. This was it. She'd be paid off. He'd be in St. Bart's with Sienna, and she'd be comfortable. No, Olivia said, the word quiet but hard. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You said you have evidence, the lawyer prompted. Of the affair? Yes, Olivia explained the tablet, the messages, the jeweler's invoice. Good. All good. It gives us a narrative. It makes him look bad, which might get him to the table faster to protect his reputation. We can leak it, but it won't break the prenup. Olivia took a deep breath. There's something else. I don't know if it's anything. Try me. He's been working on a massive merger, a Singaporean rate. It's all he talks about. But he's also been strange. He has a second laptop, a black, unbranded one. He never lets it out of his sight, and he takes calls in his study, but I can hear him. I think he's speaking German. Does he speak German? Not that I know of. He speaks French, but this sounds guttural, different. He's on the phone with his finance guys. I hear names. Roth, Kessler. And I think he's moving money, more than usual. He's always talking about mitigating exposure before the merger. But this feels different, secretive. He's been using a specific safe in his study, not the main one where we keep passports, a smaller one, hidden behind a false bookcase. Evelyn Reed, for the first time, leaned forward. Her winter sky eyes were no longer bored. They were focused. A safe. Do you have access to it? No, it's a biometric keypad, thumbprint. His thumbprint. Yes. Evelyn's face fell. Then it's useless. A court won't grant us a warrant to open a private safe based on a wife's feeling. Not in a divorce proceeding. Not against Marcus Thorne. Olivia's mind raced. A thumbprint. She remembered Marcus, drunk on New Year's Eve, boasting to a rival. My entire rainy day fund is secured by one thing. Me can't hack a thumbprint. But then a different memory surfaced. Just last week. Marcus had cut his thumb badly on a broken wine glass. A deep, jagged cut. He'd cursed, wrapped it in a bandage, and complained for 2 days that he couldn't unlock his phone or the damned office safe. He cut his thumb, Olivia said slowly, last Tuesday. Badly. On his right hand. He was complaining he couldn't unlock the safe. So how did he open it? Evelyn pressed. He had to. He had a call. I heard him swear, and then I heard the keypad. Beep, 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 then the click. He used a numerical code, Evelyn breathed. A backup code. Do you know it? No, Olivia said, her heart sinking. Then find it, Evelyn said, her voice like steel. You're going to stay. You're going to play the loving, pregnant wife. You are going to smile, and you are going to listen. You are going to find that code. Because, Miss Hayes, an affair will get you an apartment. But if a man like Marcus Thorne is using a secret safe and a backup laptop while speaking German, he's not just hiding money from a merger, he's hiding it from the government, and that is the key that unlocks everything. A close call came 2 nights later. Olivia was in his study, a place she rarely entered. She was looking for anything. A post-it note, a journal. The black laptop was on his desk, but it was locked and encrypted. Useless. She was running her fingers along the desk drawer when she heard the penthouse door open. Liv? You home? He was home. 2 hours early. Her heart stopped. She was trapped in his inner sanctum. She heard his footsteps on the marble floor. In the study, darling, she called out, her voice miraculously light. She grabbed a book, a heavy biography of Rockefeller, from his shelf and sat in his leather chair, propping her feet up. He opened the door, his eyes immediately suspicious. What are you doing in here? Just reading, she said, patting her belly. The nursery glider is comfortable, but this chair is heaven on my back. I hope you don't mind. He stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. She held her breath, her smile placid. Fine, he said, loosening his tie. Just don't touch my desk. I've got the entire Singapore deal spread out. Of course not, she said, marking her page. I'm just the nesting mother, remember? What? Nothing, darling. Just a silly pregnancy brain. Did you want a drink? He relaxed. She was just Liv. his harmless, pregnant wife. "Yeah," he said, turning away. "Get me the Macallan, and don't mess up my chair." As he walked out, she let out the breath she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the book. But as she left the room, her eyes scanned the desk one more time. Tucked under his keyboard, she saw a simple, yellow post-it note. It wasn't a code, it was a name and a number. Dr. Kessler. 011-4930. 0149, the country code for Germany. She committed the number to memory. She had her next piece. The next week was a psychological tightrope. Olivia existed in a state of bifurcated reality. Outwardly, she was the perfect, glowing, expectant mother. She finalized the birth plan. She lunched with Marcus's mother. She dutifully rubbed cocoa butter on her stretching skin. Inwardly, she was a spy. The name Kessler and the German phone number were her first solid lead. Evelyn Reed's team, with its quiet and terrifying efficiency, got to work. "Dr. Thomas Kessler," Evelyn reported back in a hushed phone call. Olivia now used a burner phone, hidden in a box of maternity clothes. "Not a medical doctor. He's a wealth manager at a private, invitation-only bank in Berlin. Roth Kessler Private Wealth. They specialize in asset protection and creative holding structures. They're boutique, they're discreet, and they're borderline illegal. If Marcus is talking to them, he's building a fortress." The safe was now Olivia's obsession. The code: beep, 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 beep. 6 digits. She tried everything. Their anniversary, 06/20/19. Error. Beep, beep, beep. His birthday, 11/04/82. Error. Her birthday, 05.12/90. Error. The penthouse address, the last 6 of his social. Nothing. She was growing desperate. The Singapore summit. His alibi for the St. Bart's trip with Sienna was in 10 days. She was running out of time. She thought back, trying to rebuild every conversation she'd ever had with him about numbers, about dates. He was not a sentimental man. An anniversary would be too obvious to her. It had to be his. She remembered a speech he'd given at a gala honoring him. She'd been bored, smiling until her face ached, but one line had stuck with her. He'd raised his glass. "People ask me my birthday. They say November 4th, but I was truly born on October 14th, 2011, the day my first venture, Apex, went public, the day I made my first billion. October 14th, 2011, 10:14:11. That night, she waited. Marcus was at a strategy dinner. She knew from the iMessage sync, which she now checked religiously, that he was actually at the Baccarat Hotel bar with Sienna. At 1 a.m., her house phone rang. It was him. His voice was thick with alcohol and smugness. "Liv, darling, I'm gonna stay downtown, at the club. Too late. Too tired. Don't wait up. Of course, Marcus. Get some rest. I love you." "Yeah, you too." He hung up. He wouldn't be home. The penthouse was hers. She walked to the study. The building was silent, save for the distant, endless hum of the city. She pulled back the heavy, brocade-bound copy of War and Peace on the shelf. The false panel clicked open, revealing the small, black, digital safe. Her fingers were icy. She pressed the keys. 101411. A single, affirmative beep. The light turned from red to green, a heavy thunk as the bolt retracted. Olivia pulled the door open. Her heart was a hummingbird in her chest. It wasn't cash. It wasn't gold. It was a laptop, the black, unbranded one, and a single, hard-bound, black ledger. She sat at his desk, the one she'd been forbidden to touch. She opened the ledger. It wasn't written in English. It was German. Columns of numbers, dates, and unfamiliar names. But numbers were a universal language. She saw Roth Kessler at the top of several pages. She saw wire transfers for millions of dollars. 10 Millionen, 20 Millionen. These were sums she couldn't comprehend. And then she saw the memo lines. SV consulting fee, 500,000 USD. SV property acquisition, 2,000 USD. SV Siena Valenti. He wasn't just buying her bracelets. He was buying her a property. He was disguising it as a consulting fee and running it through this shadow bank. This was it. This was financial infidelity on a scale that dwarfed the emotional kind. He was actively moving marital assets, hiding them in offshore accounts and in his mistress's name, all under the guise of business. She turned her attention to the laptop. She powered it on. It booted to a simple login screen. No password, just a thumbprint sensor. He'd cut his right thumb. She pressed her own thumb to it. Nothing. She tried his left. Nothing. She realized with a jolt that he hadn't disabled the biometric scanner. He'd just added the keypad as a backup. His thumbprint would still work. This laptop was a dead end. But the ledger was everything. Olivia took the burner phone from her pocket. She didn't dare move the ledger. He would know. She began to photograph every single page. Her hands shook, but she forced them steady. Page after page of damning figures, of shell corporations, with names like Apex BVI and Thorn Cayman Holdings, of the clear, deliberate siphoning of his wealth. She photographed the payments to Siena. She photographed the transfers to Roth Kessler. She took over 100 photos, her back screaming in protest from kneeling on the floor. When she was done, she placed the ledger exactly as she had found it. She closed the safe door. She listened for the click of the bolt. She slid War and Peace back into place. She went back to her room, uploaded the photos to her project, to Anchor email, and sent the link to Evelyn Reed. The subject line was simple: The Fortress. Then she deleted the email, wiped the burner phone, and climbed into her cold, empty bed. She fell asleep almost instantly, the sleep of the truly, profoundly exhausted. The next morning, Evelyn Reed called her on her regular phone. Her voice was electric, unrecognizable. "Olivia, delete the photos from your phone. Now. Wipe the burner. Do it. The email is secure. We have it." What is it? What is it? Evelyn laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "It's not a smoking gun, Olivia. It's a nuclear bomb. He's not just hiding money from you. This looks like systematic criminal tax evasion and fraudulent conveyance. He's using the merger to wash his assets and move them offshore before the SEC filing. He's not just a philanderer. He's a crook, a highly organized, very stupid crook." "Stupid?" "He wrote it down. In a book. Men like him," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with the disdain of 1,000 bitter divorces. "They're so arrogant they think they'll never be caught. They need to keep a scorecard." A new, terrifying power settled over Olivia. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? Now you do the hardest thing yet. You do nothing. He's throwing you a baby shower next week, isn't he?" "Yes, at the plaza." "You will go. You will wear a beautiful dress. You will smile. And you will graciously accept his compliments. You will be the perfect, radiant, nesting mother. You will not give him one single reason to suspect that his world is about to be set on fire." The baby shower was, like all things Marcus Thorne touched, a grotesque display of power disguised as celebration. He'd booked the grand ballroom at the plaza, filled it with thousands of dollars in white orchids, and invited over 100 of New York's social and financial elite. It wasn't a shower for Olivia. It was a PR event for Marcus, the magnanimous family man, on the eve of his massive Singapore merger. Olivia wore a bespoke light blue dress, the color chosen by Marcus's assistant to complement her glow. She felt less like a woman and more like a prop. Her smile was a mask, cemented in place. Her sister Chloe had flown in from Chicago, and her presence was the only thing keeping Olivia tethered to reality. "You look," Chloe whispered, handing her a glass of sparkling cider. "Trapped." "I look serene," Olivia corrected, her voice paper-thin. "That's the look we're going for." Marcus was in his element, holding court by the towering cake, his hand possessively on the small of Olivia's back. "My beautiful wife," he boomed to a Forbes reporter. "She's my rock, carrying my son. She's the one who deserves the credit." He hadn't asked if it was a son. He'd just assumed. Olivia smiled and leaned into him, the touch of his hand making her skin crawl. "You're too kind, darling." Then she saw her. Sienna Valenti. She was standing near the orchestra, holding a flute of champagne. She wore a tight, blood-red dress that was wildly inappropriate for a baby shower. She looked, Olivia had to admit, stunning. She was sharp, modern, and radiated an ambition that matched Marcus's. And on her wrist, glinting under the chandelier, was the diamond-paved Cartier Love bracelet. SV forever. MT. Marcus hadn't even had the decency to ask her to leave it at home. The arrogance was breathtaking. He saw Olivia looking. "Ah, Sienna," he called, waving her over. "Come say hello. Sienna is my star VP, darling. She's the one who's been crushing the Singapore deal." Sienna glided over, her eyes locking on Olivia's. There was no shame, no guilt, only a cool, triumphant assessment. She was looking at the woman she was replacing. "Olivia," Sienna said, her voice smooth as silk. "What a beautiful party. You are absolutely glowing." "Thank you, Sienna. So kind of you to come," Olivia replied, her voice just as smooth. "Marcus, darling, would you be a love and get me another cider? The baby is just drinking it all up." "Of course," he said, kissing her temple. He was relieved. His two worlds were colliding, and his pregnant wife was being a good sport. He turned to Sienna. "Don't let her overtire you with baby talk, Sienna." He winked. Then he left. The two women were alone, surrounded by the polite roar of the party. Sienna took a sip of her champagne, her eyes running over Olivia's belly with a faint, clinical distaste. "You're very calm," Sienna noted. "Most women at this stage are a mess of hormones." "I'm just so well taken care of," Olivia said, her eyes drifting pointedly to the bracelet on Sienna's wrist. "Marcus thinks of everything, and everyone." Sienna's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. She'd expected tears or a scene. She hadn't expected ice. "He's a very generous man," Sienna said, recovering. "He values loyalty and results." "He certainly does," Olivia agreed. She looked at the bracelet again. "That's a beautiful piece. Is it new?" Sienna instinctively touched it, a flash of pride in her eyes. "Yes. A recent gift. For closing a preliminary deal. How lovely. It looks just like the one I have. But mine's the classic gold. I've always found the diamond one to be a little desperate, don't you think? So loud. It's as if the person wearing it needs to prove they're valuable." Sienna's face went blank. The insult, delivered with a serene smile, had hit its mark. I don't think—" "Oh goodness, look at me," Olivia said, laughing lightly and touching her own head. "Baby brain, I'm forgetting my manners. Thank you for all your hard work on the Singapore deal. It must be so exhausting, all that consulting, all those fees, all that travel." The color drained from Sienna's face. The words consulting and fees hung in the air, sudden and sharp. They were the exact words from the ledger. Sienna knew, in that instant, that Olivia knew. Her triumphant smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of pure panic. I don't know what you're talking about," Sienna stammered. "Don't you?" Olivia said, still smiling. She leaned in, as if sharing a secret. "You're very smart, Sienna. Ambitious, but you tied yourself to the wrong man. He's not generous, he's reckless, and he keeps records." Before Sienna could respond, Olivia turned away. "Chloe!" she called, waving her sister over. "Come, you must try the cake." She left Sienna Valenti, standing frozen by the orchestra, the blood-red dress suddenly looking cheap, the $50,000 bracelet on her wrist feeling, Olivia hoped, as heavy as a shackle. Marcus returned, handing Olivia her cider. He glanced at Sienna, who was pale and staring at them. "Is she all right?" he asked. "I think so," Olivia said, taking a sip. "She just seems a little over-invested. Maybe she needs a vacation." "Funny you should say that," he started, but Olivia cut him off. "Oh, darling, it's time to open the presents. I just can't wait." She pulled him toward the mountain of blue and white boxes, her smile brighter than the chandeliers. She had shown her hand, just one card, just to Sienna. She wanted Marcus's mistress to know. She wanted her to spend the next few days in terror, wondering what Olivia knew and when the axe would fall. The rest of the party was a performance of a lifetime. Olivia cooed over silver rattles and designer diaper bags, all while the ledger pages scrolled behind her eyes. "SV consulting fee, $500,000 USD. She had survived, but the mask was heavy, and she didn't know how much longer she could wear it. The Singapore summit was 3 days away. The tension in the penthouse was thick enough to choke on. Marcus was agitated, constantly on his phone, but not with Sienna. The iMessage thread had gone cold. After the baby shower, Sienna had apparently flown to LA for a family emergency. Olivia knew this was a lie. Sienna was running scared. Marcus's agitation was now focused on his German contacts. He took his calls in the study with the door locked. Olivia's calm, serene presence seemed to grate on him. He needed her to be emotional, to be a distraction. Her placidity was unnerving him. "You're awfully quiet," he snapped on Tuesday night, 2 days before his flight. "Just tired, Marcus," she said, folding a baby blanket. "The shower was a lot. I'm just nesting." She used his own word, nesting, and saw him flinch. He grunted and retreated back to his study. It was time. Evelyn's instructions were precise. "You will not leave in a hurry. You will not pack a suitcase. He will cancel your credit cards the second he's served. You will not be able to book a hotel or a flight. You must be gone, with everything you need, before he even knows you're gone." The plan was the donation. For the past week, Olivia had been amassing boxes in the nursery. She'd told Marcus they were duplicates from the shower, gifts to donate to the children's shelter. He'd seen the boxes, labeled "Donation, Upper Baby," and "Donation, Carter's," and thought nothing of it. On Wednesday, the day before Marcus's flight, Olivia executed the plan. Marcus was in an all-day board meeting at his downtown office. He wouldn't be back until late. At 10 a.m., Chloe arrived, not in a taxi, but in a large, anonymous U-Haul van she'd rented for cash from a lot in Queens. She'd parked it at a service entrance 3 blocks away. The doorman, Juan, was on duty. Olivia had been cultivating him for weeks, bringing him coffee, asking about his family, and tipping him extravagantly. "Juan, good morning," she said, her voice warm. "My sister is here. We're finally taking all those donation boxes to the shelter. There are a lot. Is it okay if we use the service elevator? Of course, Mrs. Thorne. Let me get you a cart. You're a lifesaver. Thank you." For 3 hours, Olivia and Chloe moved. The boxes labeled "Donation" contained no baby clothes. One held her grandmother's jewelry, the pieces she hadn't sold, and all the cash she'd been able to pull from her allowance. Another held the burner phone, now wiped clean, and all of her important documents: passport, birth certificate, her mother's address book. A third held her personal laptops, which Evelyn's team had already scrubbed and loaded with security software. The rest of the boxes held her most cherished personal items. Not the designer clothes, but the photo albums, her grandmother's painting, the books she loved. Everything that made her Olivia, not Mrs. Thorne. They packed the U-Haul in the pouring rain, two women sweating and struggling with the heavy-duty tape, looking like any other New Yorkers on moving day. By 1 p.m., the nursery was half empty. The crib was still there. The glider. But the personal touches were gone. "What about the rest?" Chloe asked, breathing heavily. "It's just stuff," Olivia said, looking at a closet full of designer shoes. "He bought it. He can keep it." They drove the U-Haul to a high-end, climate-controlled storage unit in a nondescript building, one Evelyn Reed had secured under a corporate LLC. They unloaded the boxes. Olivia Hayes was now officially erased, her true self safely stored away. Chloe drove her, not to a hotel, but to a high-security, furnished apartment on the Upper West Side, leased for 6 months under the same LLC. It was simple, clean, and above all, anonymous. "Evelyn will have a private security detail outside by 5 p.m., Chloe said, handing her a key. "You're safe here, Liv. You did it." Olivia hugged her sister, the first real, unrestrained hug she'd given in months. "I couldn't have—" "Chloe, thank you." "Go," Chloe said, her eyes fierce. "Go finish this." There was one last thing to do. Olivia took a taxi back to the penthouse. She had to be there when Marcus got home. She had to play the part one last time. She was in the kitchen, calmly making a cup of raspberry leaf tea when he walked in at 7 p.m. He looked exhausted and angry. "Board meeting was a nightmare," he grumbled, throwing his briefcase down. "I swear I'm surrounded by idiots. Is my bag packed for tomorrow?" "Yes, darling," Olivia said, her voice a perfect imitation of wifely duty. "All pressed. Your flight is at 9 a.m., right?" "Yeah, thank God. 3 days in Singapore, then 3 days in St. Bart's. It's just what I need." He'd said it. He'd said St. Bart's out loud. He was so arrogant, so consumed by his own plans that he'd mixed up his lies. Olivia's smile didn't waver. "St. Bart's? I thought you said the summit was in Singapore." Marcus froze. He stared at her. The air crackled. This was the moment, the confrontation, the tears, the screaming he'd been expecting. I meant," he stammered, his mind racing for a save. "The team is going to St. Bart's. After. As a reward. I'm just so tired. I mixed them up. I'm only going to Singapore." "Oh," Olivia said, turning back to her tea. "That's nice for them. You should get some rest, Marcus. You have a long flight." He stared at her, baffled. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying. She believed him. Or she just didn't care. He was too tired to figure it out. "Yeah, I'm going to bed." He went into the bedroom. Olivia sat at the kitchen island, sipping her tea, her heart beating a slow, steady, powerful rhythm. He'd just confirmed his own lie. It was the last nail in his coffin. She waited until she heard his deep breathing, the sound that had once brought her comfort and now filled her with disgust. She walked, not to the bedroom, but to his study. On his pristine, billion-dollar desk, she placed a single, plain, white envelope. Inside was not a letter. There were no accusations, no. How could you? There was only one document, a copy of the divorce petition, already filed with the state of New York, and on top of it, the single, unadorned, Cartier Love bracelet, the classic gold one he had given her when they got engaged. She left it there. She walked to the nursery. She looked at the empty shelves and the grey crib. She placed one hand on it, said a silent goodbye, and then walked out. She did not look back. She took the elevator down, walked past the night doorman with a polite, "Good night, Luis," and stepped out into the damp New York street. She got into a black car that was waiting for her, a car sent by Evelyn Reed, and disappeared into the night. The silence was, finally, over. Marcus Thorne woke at 6 a.m. to the smell of nothing. Usually the smell of coffee was brewing. Olivia, even in her 3rd trimester, always got up to see him off. "Liv?" he called. The apartment was still. He grunted, annoyed. She was probably sleeping in. He was running late. He showered, dressed, and went to the kitchen. No coffee. No Olivia. "Olivia!" he yelled, louder this time. He walked to the nursery. He pushed the door open. The room was cold and half empty. The boxes were gone. The shelves were bare. The little cashmere outfits and blankets, gone. A cold, sharp panic, entirely different from his usual business anxieties, seized him. The crib was still there. But she was gone. Her things were gone. He raced back to their bedroom. He flung open her walk-in closet. All her clothes, her shoes, her purses, everything was there. He was confused. She'd left. But she'd left all her valuable things. He saw her jewelry box. He opened it. Empty. Except for the cheap costume pieces. Her grandmother's pearls, the tennis bracelet he'd given her, the sapphire earrings, all gone. She hadn't been kidnapped. She'd left. But why leave the $10,000 handbags and take the sentimental junk? It didn't make sense. He stormed into his study to grab his briefcase, and then he saw it. The white envelope on his desk. His name was not on it. He ripped it open. He saw the legal font first. Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of New York, petition for dissolution of marriage, Olivia Hayes, Thorne, petitioner, versus Marcus A. Thorne, respondent. His vision tunneled. Divorce. She was divorcing him. "She's getting nothing," he snarled, his first thought of the prenup. "She's getting $50K a month and a condo. She's an idiot." Then he saw the bracelet, his first gift to her. He picked it up, a symbolic, childish gesture. He was furious. He was about to call his lawyer, Julian Vance, to crush her, when his phone rang. It was Julian. "Marcus." Julian's voice was strained, high-pitched. "Where are you?" "I'm in my study. I'm looking at it right now. She's filed." "So what? The prenup is ironclad. Bury her, Julian. Make her pay for this." "Marcus, shut up and listen to me," Julian said, his voice flat. "You are not going to Singapore." "The hell I'm not! The merger!" "The merger is dead, Marcus. So is St. Bart's. So is everything if you don't listen to me. I just got a call from Evelyn Reed. Evelyn Reed." The name sent a jolt of ice water through Marcus's veins. Evelyn Reed wasn't a divorce lawyer. She was a corporate executioner. "So what?" he blustered. "She can't touch me." "She can, Marcus. She's not just filing for divorce. She's filing an emergency injunction to freeze your assets, all of them, personal and corporate." "She can't! The prenup! She's not using the prenup!" Julian roared. "She's alleging fraudulent conveyance, conspiracy, and, God help us, Marcus, RICO. RICO! That's a criminal charge. That's for mobsters. She has no proof." There was a long, terrible silence on the other end of the line. "Julian, what is it?" "Evelyn Reed," Julian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Sent me a file, a 100-page PDF. It's... Marcus, it's the Roth-Kessler ledger. She has the German ledger. She has the wire transfers. She has the shell cores. She has the Siena Valenti consulting fee." Marcus Thorne dropped the phone. He stumbled back to his desk. He went to the bookshelf, shoved War and Peace aside, and clawed at the panel. He typed in the code, 101411. The safe opened. The laptop was there. But the black, hard-bound ledger was gone. She'd taken it. The real one. The one with his handwriting. He hadn't been married to a nesting mother. He'd been married to a ghost. The click of the safe opening hadn't just been his code. It was the sound of his entire empire collapsing. "Julian," he said, picking up the phone, his voice hollow. "Call them. Settle. Give her whatever she wants. Just keep the feds out of this." "Marcus," Julian said, his voice grim. "It's too late. Evelyn Reed told me she sent a courtesy copy to the SEC and to the U.S. Attorney's Office, an anonymous tip." Marcus finally, truly understood. Olivia didn't just want a divorce. She wanted to burn it all down. He sank into his leather chair, the one she'd sat in. He was not going to Singapore. He was not going to St. Bart's. He was not going to be a billionaire by lunchtime. He looked at the petition. Grounds for divorce, irreconcilable differences. He laughed, a dry, broken sound. His pregnant, silent wife, the woman he'd dismissed as a useful distraction, had just single-handedly dismantled his life, and she'd done it without raising her voice. The fallout was not a storm. It was an apocalypse. The Wall Street Journal broke the story first, not as a gossip piece, but as a financial earthquake. Thorne Global CEO Marcus Thorne, under SEC investigation, Singapore merger halted. The New York Post followed, with a gleeful, full-page headline. "Thorne apart, jilted preggy wife's $1 billion revenge." Marcus was radioactive. His board forced him to step down. His partners sued him. And Sienna Valenti, seeing the ship sinking, immediately turned state's witness in exchange for limited immunity. She gave the feds everything she had, painting Marcus as a master manipulator and herself as a pawn. Marcus was trapped. He was facing a RICO charge, which could mean 20 years in federal prison. He was facing the SEC. He was facing ruin. And then there was Evelyn Reed. The divorce settlement negotiation was not a negotiation. It was an execution. Evelyn Olivia, now 8 months pregnant and radiant, and their team sat across from Marcus and his shell-shocked lawyers. "Here is the offer," Evelyn said, sliding a single paper across the table. "You will not fight it. You will not contest it. You will sign it today." Marcus looked. Olivia wasn't asking for half. She wasn't asking for the company. She was asking for 2 things. 1, the immediate, uncontested, and permanent transfer of $400 million in clean, liquid assets, the amount Evelyn had calculated he'd hidden, not his total worth, into a trust for her and the child. 2, his signature on a document that would cede all total and permanent parental rights. He would have no claim. He would pay no child support. It wasn't needed, but he would also never see the child. He would not be named on the birth certificate. He would, in the eyes of the law, not be a father. "This is," Marcus sputtered, "this is extortion. You want me to give up my child?" Olivia spoke for the first time. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a diamond. "You gave up your child, Marcus, when you called her a useful distraction. When you put her mother at risk by building a life on criminal lies. You don't get to be a father. You're barely a person. You're just a lesson." She paused, then delivered the final, crushing blow. "Sign it, and I will sign an NDA. My affidavit to the U.S. Attorney will be forgetful. I will state that I found the ledger, gave it to my lawyer, but have no memory of its specific contents. I will be the grieving wife who knew nothing. It might save you from the RICO charge. It might not. But it's the only chance you have." He was trapped. It was $400 million, and his son to maybe stay out of prison. He signed. 3 months later, Olivia Hayes, no longer Thorne, gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Hope. She did not stay in New York. She moved to London, bought a beautiful, light-filled townhouse in Notting Hill, and returned to her first love, art. She endowed a new wing at the Tate for emerging female artists. She was in a quiet London park, pushing Hope on a swing, when her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Former CEO Marcus Thorne, avoiding prison in a deal with prosecutors, pleads guilty to 6 counts of wire fraud and tax evasion, fined $100 million and sentenced to 5 years, suspended, Thorne Global to be broken up and sold for parts. He had avoided prison, but he had lost everything else: his company, his reputation, his name. Olivia looked at the alert, then at her daughter, who was laughing, her face turned up to the sun. Sienna Valenti was last heard of trying to sell a reality show. Julian Vance had been disbarred. The penthouse on the park had been seized by the government. Olivia locked her phone. She didn't feel triumph. She didn't feel rage. She just felt peace. She had faced the fire, and instead of letting it consume her, she had quietly, silently, taken the coals and used them to build a new foundation, a new life. She was not a billionaire's wife. She was just Olivia. And for the first time, she was completely and truly free. And that's the story of Olivia Hayes. She proves that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it is the silence of a woman gathering her evidence. She proves that the best revenge isn't screaming or crying. It's strategy. While Marcus and Sienna were blinded by their arrogance, Olivia was playing a different game entirely. She wasn't just leaving a marriage, she was executing a takeover of her own life. What do you think of Olivia's silent strategy? Have you or anyone you know ever had to choose quiet strength over loud drama? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were captivated by this story, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story of justice and true empowerment. Thanks for listening.